Hello and welcome to this week's fashion news. I am back, and this is really me, not an AI, because in fact this week we're having a bit of a technology special, if you may call it as such, as we do a deep dive in on the use of AI in fashion. Of course, you may have seen the news that H&M is the first high street brand to announce that they will begin regularly using AI models. They are certainly not the first to try this, and probably not the last to try this. So what does this all mean for fashion? Joining me to discuss all of that is Tindsley, an award-winning creative technologist with years of experience in the advertising industry. Hello. And Maxine Dunkley, the founder of talent agency Atmosphere, who provide models and actors for the fashion and creative industries, working on campaigns for everyone, from Nike to Gucci. Thank you, Art. Thank you, Maxine, for joining Fashion News. Obviously, fashion world is always buzzing with news. There's always so much going on, but I really wanted to use my platform this week to really dig into this AI thing, because H&M is truly the first retailer of such size to use AI models openly. And the reaction, my gosh, how was your reaction first, Maxine?
It's worrying, to be honest, for the industry. As we speak, lots of sort of bodies within my industry have been coming together. The unions such as Equity have been having meetings with like the Casting Directors Association and the Casting Directors Guild to discuss this, because it is a worry for us all. It's not just the model that you see in front of a campaign that's affected. It's a collaborative effort to get a model there in the first place. So there's a whole production team, there's casting directors, there's cameramen, there's makeup artists, there's, stylists. Everyone there is a team to get them there, and all of those jobs can be affected.
And what I love about having you both today on today's show is that we have two different perspectives. We have Maxine, who's speaking from the talent point of view, but Art, you are an award-winning technologist. What was your reaction when you heard the news?
I think it's inevitable, unfortunately, but worrying as well. I mean, I completely empathise, and somebody who's been in the creative industries my whole life, you look at this kind of news and you think of it from two sides. You think of it from the technical implementation of it and what's going on, but you also think about it from a very human perspective about, like you said, there is so much more involved in this than what you see in the end picture. There's many jobs, many different perspectives and insights and thoughts that go into these kind of shoots, and that's something we need to talk about and address. And I think that's why we're here, is to have that conversation, to make sure that the ramifications of these kinds of technologies are dealt with in a way that's correct and done properly.
Thank you, Art. It's interesting to have your perspective, and interesting to have Maxine's point of view as well, from talent point of view. But let's take a look at what H&M has to say about this. This is something that will enhance our creative process and how we work with marketing, but fundamentally not change our human-centric approach in any way. Because I want to flag that they are not using AI models that are just random, but they are using digital twins, right? Which is very interesting about how they're approaching this. So they will take the real model, they will shoot the model from different angles, and then will use their digital twin in their campaigns. Now, Maxine, my question to you, who represents models, don't you think it could be an opportunity for models? Because, for example, what if you're walking down the runway in Milan Fashion Week, and then you would lose a booking for a shoot which perhaps would be happening in New York? But now with this, you could be doing both. You could be walking down the runway in Milan, and also you could have your digital twin doing a campaign in New York. What do you think about this?
This could be true, absolutely. But what it also can do, it could then concentrate just to the very elite models, and then, because what happens is when a model is booked and they're not available for another job, it allows another model that opportunity. But if you take that away, you run the risk of it just being a very small group of the most sought after models.
But then what about monetization, right? Couldn't it be more money essentially for the model if they do have their digital twin being used somewhere.
Yeah, the ones that are selected, but what I'm saying is concentrate it on those models, and maybe some other models are going to not have that opportunity to be able to do it, because some of the models will be doing all of the work.
Mm-hmm. And Art, what about you? What do you think from technology point of view?
I can't pretend to understand your side of the industry, but the one thing that I'm thinking that is obviously a concern is obviously that you're talking about the models that are currently there, that are booked and are being used within the industry. What about up and coming models? Because
this is what I'm saying. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
If they haven't got a brand already and they haven't, there's no requirement to make a digital twin of them, where do they get left in the industry? What will happen to the people that haven't already got to that level of credibility?
That's what I'm trying to say. And then also, with the digital twin, are they going to have them as is, or are they going to enhance them slightly? So then we run the risk of this beauty that's unrealistic, you know? So, will they be exactly a twin of the model?
You're both making a brilliant point. I would love to take a look at the wider reaction now, because another piece of reaction is from Equity, who of course represent actors and other faces in the creative industry here in the UK. Well, they say, the race to innovate in the area of artificial intelligence must also not be a race to the bottom to increase profits. Artificial intelligence would not be possible without human artistry and labor, and humans should remain at the center of creative endeavors. I wonder if H&M, now being just a little bit of devil's advocate here, aren't they actually putting humans at the center of this? Couldn't the argument be made? Because, as you said, Art, right? AI is there, AI will be there. Mm-hmm. And you know what it really reminds me of? We had autotune, right, back in the music industry. We all realize that autotune will be there, whether you use it or not, but it will be there. And autotune will never replace brilliant singers. So it can only, so I think it's the same with AI. Couldn't the argument be made that AI will never replace humans? But I think that H&M is kind of putting humans at the center of this, and rather than removing the humans, they're kind of
enhancing.
Yes, exactly. What would be your response to this?
I mean, I think this is a test. I think they're being open about the fact that they're putting watermarks on it in order to test the market. I think we can't be blinkered to the fact that we're in a capitalist society where there is people that are caring about the bottom line, and that is part of what they're doing. And they've got to box clever and think carefully about their audience and who they're trying to talk to. And unless their audience reacts in a horrific way, what's going to, how are they going to navigate this in a way that makes most sense for them? It's going to be about the numbers, unfortunately, and I think that is part of what's happening. And we have to be open and smart about how we get the right rights in place, the right kind of contracts in place, ensure that we protect people and make sure that they have got the right protection in place.
Absolutely.
I think as well, we have to look at the streams of revenue that a model has from doing a campaign, for example, because it's not just how are they going to get paid with this? Because you have the shoot fee, you have the wardrobe fee, you have the usage fee, and then you have extra usage if they're going to use it again. So there's so many different other streams of revenue that the model will get, but how are they going to pay for this? How is it going to be?
I love that you mentioned that about usage rights, because if, let's say, there's a model now watching our show today, and let's say they're just about to book the job, and they say also, well, we would want to have a digital twin of yours. What would be your advice? How should models, if they don't have the representation, for example, how can they price it?
Usage is based on where it's being shown, how long something is going to be shown for. You will have the option of reusing that image. So then there will be a 10% markup on that if it was used for an additional time period. So once they have your image, how is this going to be?
Because I think an argument could be made, well, could it be the same price as for regular usage rights, because the model wouldn't need to travel, wouldn't need to, they basically
that's based on the shoot. So the travel, comes all within the day rates for a model. So you'll have one section of payment, which is for you know, that it allows for their wardrobe days. It's all the pre-production days really, and then and their shoot days, which is the basic studio fee. And so that's one element of the pay. And then afterwards, then the usage right is the use of that model's image, which I suppose if the same image is being used as a twin, it would be paid the same. But it's then, are they going to put that model in a different scenario? Are they going to use that image and then sort of tweak it? Can you tweak it once it's been made?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So then that eliminates them going and having to reshoot it again. So the day rates they're going to not have that.
Absolutely. Art, a question to you. Who should protect? You said earlier we should be protective, right, of the limits. Who does it depend on? The government policies? Who is in play? Whose responsibility is that?
In some ways, that's kind of multiple questions in one, in that there are many different things going on here. There's the data that these models have been trained on. And that data can be vast. Sometimes it's not copyright protected. There's a huge kind of risk of indemnity and who's going to be at risk if there are any copyright infringements on the actual data for how the models are created themselves. That's one part. For the models themselves, and that kind of does align with the other parts of the shoot as well. So you've got, you know, the lighting, you've got the location, you've got all those different styles that have been organised. Those guys, we're not talking about those guys in this conversation, which slightly worries me as well, because they've fed that data, you know, that latent data that is there. They've kind of, you know, whether they know it or not, they've fed into that. And I think, you know, the more obvious ones are the ones that we're talking about, which is models' rights and the people that are in the shoot. But they need to be protected of their likeness, any infringement of what they're going to do. Like you say, the loss of earnings because of the shoots that they're going to miss out on. I don't know if anyone's got the template for that yet. I think that's still being worked out as we go. And yeah, you have got to be concerned about those up and coming models as well. About they're not going to have, if you're not in that game, you've lost the opportunity to get in there, and that's another area that worries me. The other thing we're not talking about as well, and you know, I'm usually a very optimistic person when it comes to technology, is the fact that it doesn't take much to tweak the likeness of a model, and suddenly you're outside of copyright sort of areas.
That's a brilliant point. Would you like to add some more to that?
Yeah, I mean, if you know, I'm not a copyright expert by any way, shape or form, but if what's to stop certain individuals, companies from creating models that are their own, and then they own everything about that
and then they won't have to pay usage rights. They won't have to pay anything.
It leads to my next point about availability, because, you know, we've done our research here on Fashion News, and we decided to look kind of a little bit deeper into this. And the reality is that there are already so many websites that offer you the service to create an AI fashion model, or indeed an already existing one. So website after website, and many of them also appear to claim that they are already being used by some fashion brands, although of course that is not verified and we can't back up those claims. So again, I'm being a devil's advocate, you may like it or not, but I'm thinking, some fashion brands might be already using AI models, but not really being open about it. So is it fair now for H&M to be criticized when they are using it and being open about it? And also, as I said earlier, still kind of trying to put humans at the center of this. How would you respond?
Bringing it back to the models that I'm also quite scared about is models then sort of being encouraged to have their duplicates made, and then where does this sit? Because you've now got these out in the out in the cyber ether, and there's all this deep fake stuff and all of that. You know that you've then got the image of the models on file that could be seen in all sorts of scenarios. Well, how are they protected?
I agree. Art, anything to add to that?
I would love to say that I have all the answers, but the reality is, from a technical perspective, they're not really. I mean, you can kind of manipulate and change images, and if you look at a lot of the kind of virtual influencers, actually the reality is it's shot with a normal individual, and the face is swapped out later on as part of that kind of relationship, and they own that as well.
Who owns that though?
Well, the virtual influencers would own that whole IP themselves because they've created it. So that's their own kind of IP that they have, and they can do as they wish with it, which is a slightly different kind of perspective, but certainly one that's worth being aware of.
As a technologist yourself, would you applaud H&M for being open about using AI and not really hiding it and putting humans and saying, we're going to only create a digital twin and we're going to give you a cut from whatever earnings or whatever it is. Obviously, it's a test. But I wonder whether you want to criticize them or would you want to applaud them for being open in the age of AI?
I think we're in a bit of an arms race at the moment, and it's an opportunity to at least put a little bit of a stake in the ground, and that they're using models that they've worked with before, and that they are protecting their rights, and that they are, as far as I'm aware, putting a watermark on those in order, as I think it is a bit of a test, and there is obviously a bit of PR in here as well, because the conversation needs to happen. We can't pretend that this is not happening. We can't pretend this isn't happening, that this is some monster that's living in the woods that's kind of coming to get us. We're creating this. We are beholden to make sure that the path forward is a responsible one and one that protects everybody. And so would I applaud them? I don't know if I would go that far. Would I criticize them? I think it's not that binary. I think we live in a binary world where if something is good or is bad, it's not. It's happening, and they are exploring it. They're being open about it. And like you said, there's a lot of people already doing this. Yeah. So I think it's someone's got to make that move, and they were openly one of the first.
Absolutely. And Maxine, from your perspective, someone who represents models, right? I think my question would be the same to you. Would you applaud the retailer of that size like H&M that is kind of open about using it, and they are saying that it is a test, and we do admit that it might not be a popular choice of ours to use AI digital twins, but it's also something that is inevitable. Would you applaud that? Or
I mean, I applaud their honesty, that it's, that they're putting their hands up and saying that they're doing it. That I do applaud, but I think it's the fact that it is such a big corporation that's announcing it, it just lends itself to then for others to follow suit, and that's what's worrying for me. We are absolutely terrified about this.
Absolutely. Well, again, I'm going back to music. I think when Cher was the first one to use autotune and sounded like an alien, it was probably worrying at the same time, and then we kind of learned how to live with autotune, and I think reliving history but now just with AI. I want to thank you both for joining Fashion News. What an interesting conversation, and two completely different but also kind of similar perspectives, which I really appreciate. So that's all for this week's Fashion News, and don't forget to follow and subscribe to both my page on Instagram, TikTok, and keep up here with my daily fashion news on YouTube. Thank you for watching. I will see you next Sunday. Mwah.